You're listening to Professions Over Dinner with author and host Cynthia.
Chapter 5. Love and Lonely Hearts. Ella collected her thoughts before she sat down to eat and made up her mind to quickly drop off the food to Pete and Theo so they could have it while it was still hot. She was still in her favourite gym wear. It was a long black sleeve with thumb holes and matching full-length tights which hugged her body just right and gave her a little booty lift. Of course, she wasn't aware of the effect it would have on Theo because everyone has seen her in her gym gear and she thought nothing of it. Her packed dinner was wrapped in a pink cloth and she gently knocked on Pete's door. "Coming!" It was Theo who answered the door. He was wearing a casual grey cotton shirt and plaid blue pyjama shorts. The boys were having some wine and a smorgasbord filled with fruit and cheese, all from Pete's last work trip up at the Hunter Valley. "Thanks for the stir-fry, Ella. It smells great." Pete eagerly took it off her hands and placed it on the kitchen table. Ella smiled and moved her attention back to Theo. "Oh, here's my response." She handed Theo a little note inside an envelope. She had written her number and the words, "Yes." Theo was elated. "Do you want to come in and have some wine with us?" Theo smiled back. "Only if you try my cooking first," Ella countered. "Deal," Pete chimed. The boys opened the packed glass containers with rice neatly placed onto one side and took a bite. "Amazing as usual," Pete said. This is delicious, Ella. Love a good homemade meal," Theo added. Ella was delighted to hear the compliments and helped herself to some grapes as she watched them relish each bite. The night was warm and the room was lively. They played soft jazz music in the background and everyone got the chance to catch up with one another about the last few months of business and family. There was plenty of food to go around and the wine was flowing. Pete went on to discuss about how his friend in the Hunter Valley was offering him a partnership to a new winery and dairy farm that was about to open up. And the gifts were samples to entice him. Theo thought it would be a good opportunity to expand his growing portfolio and made some wise business suggestions for long-term prosperity for the company, which Pete was tempted to name Dairy Dove & Co. Ella agreed that the name was sweet and easy to remember. The buffalo cheese was some of the best she has ever tasted and supported Pete in going all in. The conversation ended up about talking about their love lives and how they remembered their early romances. Ella could recall her first love as a young child with her next-door neighbor. They lived in the same flat as her family and would often play together at the park or go on playdates together with their parents. He would give her flowers he picked himself at the park, and they would hold hands when jumping on puddles. Pete and Theo looked at her and smiled at how earnest Ella was. They all laughed about their celebrity crushes, primary and high school loves, and reflected on their young adult, long-term relationships and heartbreak. Theo had been mostly the one that broke up the relationship because he realized that it wasn't working out and he didn't feel the same way as the girls he dated. Pete had the opposite effect. It was him that was the one that was being broken up, and he half-joked that Theo was blessed with both good looks and a good heart, which attracted everyone to him. Ella and Theo couldn't keep their eyes off each other. Maybe it was the wine or the atmosphere, but their instant attraction was so obvious that Pete was fading into the background, chattering about how he'd like to settle down one day soon with the right person. It was getting late and Ella rubbed her eyes. Theo offered to walk her back to her apartment. They turned to look at each other. Ella knew that she couldn't give away how she was feeling for him and said, "Thank you for the lovely evening. Thank you for the amazing food and company. I will make sure to bring you back the clean lunch boxes tomorrow," Theo responded. Ella swayed a little and landed on Theo's chest. But before she could pull away, he held her close. His cologne was woody with a hint of floral scent. His broad chest felt warm and safe, and she could hear his heart beat. "Good night, Ella." Theo kissed her head and waved goodbye as he headed back to Pete's place. Ella was blushing furiously and was stunned for a moment before realizing what happened and quietly went back into her apartment. Theo hoped Ella didn't mind the hug. She leaned into him, but he had to hold back and wanted to go slow so he could get to know her better. He was excited about finally taking Ella out on a proper date and couldn't wait for Saturday to roll around. The venue was already booked and the flowers were arranged for delivery to her door on the day. She made his heart flutter like no one else. She was like the sun, lighting up everywhere she went and everyone she met, and he grinned. "This is something new. It looks like someone is falling in love," Pete teased. And Theo didn't deny it. There was something about Ella that made him want to protect her. She was clever, sexy, and made him feel at ease to be around. It was effortless to be himself around her. There was no facade or playing cards close to his chest, because that was the world he grew up in. Theo's phone buzzed. His dreamy thoughts abruptly stopped, and he came crashing back down to reality. Laura and Cherry, aka Cheryl, his old flames, had messaged him to see how he was. Laura was a childhood friend, which they dated in primary school and on and off again in high school. That ended naturally as they grew apart, but they stayed good friends. Cherry was his first serious girlfriend in high school, and they both lost their virginity together, but college, distance, and high emotions was what drove them apart. They both moved on and had children with amazing men whom Theo became friends with. He texted them back reassuring them that he was doing fine in Australia and Pete was hosting his stay this time, so no crazy late nights. He began to text about Ella, but decided to keep her a secret and to himself for now. It was the other text message that froze him in place. Stacey Bradley. Stacey couldn't stay away from him and stalked him on all of his accounts. She was a blonde bombshell with an affluent family and close connections to his parents and people of higher power. Stacey had the perfect pampered life with a line of suitors, but was fixated on the idea that her and Theo were meant to be. Especially after Theo's father half promised her that they would get married when they were children. Innocent enough back then, but borderline stalkerish and obsessive into adulthood. He only saw her as a little sister and nothing more, but he had to keep his distance as she would try to seduce him with any chance she got to be near him in person. "Hey Theo, you alright?" Pete asked. "You've been staring at your phone for a good while." "Yeah, it's just Stacey is trying to come back into my life again." Theo shoved the phone back into his pocket after turning it on to Do Not Disturb mode. "You've got to do something about Stacey. She's relentless. Hot, but scary," Pete warned. "I know, but I just can't cut it off like that with her. My mum knows I'm not interested, but no one can stop Stacey when she puts her mind to something." "And she always gets what she wants," Pete finished. But not this time. Theo was not her plaything or a trophy to be won. He had to be very clear to Stacey that nothing was going to happen between them. It was going to be a difficult conversation and a long road ahead to follow his heart because he was done with pleasing other people and living up to their expectations. "See you in a few weeks, Stacey XOX." Oh no, Stacey was coming on a business trip with her parents to Sydney soon. Maybe this was the opportunity Theo needed to break things off with Stacey once and for all. But he needed something to help soften the blow. "Pete, do you think you can attend the welcome party for Stacey and her family with me in a few weeks?" Theo asked. "Of course. Just make sure you hook me up with a sweetheart on the day," Pete replied. "Don't worry, I have the perfect woman in mind," Theo trailed off. He took a deep breath in and typed. "Hey Stacey, looking forward to seeing you and your family in a few weeks' time. Have a good night," Theo responded. A heart appeared next to the message the instant it was sent and read. "Scary," Pete looked over. Tell me about it, Theo replied. Just then, there was a text from Ella. Thank you and Pete for a wonderful evening. The food was delicious, and Pete should definitely take the deal. Ella, X. Theo felt happy again, and his tension melted away. He replied with a heart to the message and responded back with, You're very welcome. Come by any time. We love your cooking. Theo, X. Ella responded with a heart to his message. This was definitely the beginning of something new, and Theo hoped with all of his heart that this was love. Thank you for listening to Professions Over Dinner. I hoped you enjoyed today's episode and look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye!